What's up, psychedelic investors? My name's James, and you're watching The Psychedelic Investor, your number one news source for psychedelic stocks. Today, we are, of course, going to be discussing the MindMed Nasdaq uplisting. Today, it started trading on the Nasdaq under the ticker symbol MNMD. And I know that the first day results weren't as exciting as we had all been hoping, but this was still a major event that I am super excited for, so I went out and bought myself a little bit of Pisco to celebrate with that I'll be drinking tonight. I hope that you guys can all see past the little short-term bump in the road here, or the little short-term decrease in the stock price rather, and understand that this is such a major milestone that we really all should be celebrating right now. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about, first, of course, what happened with the stock price today, and we're going to compare that with my predictions that I made in the last video. Then, next up, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about where the stock and the company is going from here. Specifically, we are going to cover some short-term catalysts that will happen over the next few months for MindMed. But first, if you enjoy this episode, make sure you invest in the channel with your like and subscribe. Over time, you'll see your investment grow as we continue to bring you the information that you need to know before investing in the psychedelic medicines landscape. Enjoy the episode, guys. So today when I woke up, I felt like a kid on Christmas. I couldn't wait to run into the living room and open up all my presents underneath the tree, because as somebody who invested in this company, who invested in MindMed at their IPO over a year ago now, and who has been banging on the drum to anybody who would listen that this is a game-changing, revolutionary company, I kind of feel vindicated, validated. Of course, there's still obviously a long way to go from here, years and years to go from here, but I feel like the fact that the mainstream attention is finally catching on and this company got added to the Nasdaq, it marks a new beginning for the psychedelic medicines landscape. So psychedelic medicines have really gained legitimacy, first in the eyes of the scientific world, then in the eyes of the government regulators, and now with this uplisting, in the eyes of our financial overlords on Wall Street. So even though long-term investors in this space could still make a killing, the main effects of this is actually going to be helping millions of people worldwide get the help that they so desperately need. Depression, addiction, anxiety, severe ADHD, and PTSD. These all are crippling disabilities that we have, and as a society, we haven't really been able to do anything. We've been helpless to help these individuals. So knowing that I can be a part in this solution, even if I'm just a tiny, tiny, tiny little cog in the machine, being a small-scale retail investor, it honestly makes me feel really proud. So getting to the events of the day. MindMed today, MNMD. Damn, does it feel good to say that. I got to get used to saying that. MNMD, MNMD. So yes, today, MindMed, MNMD, closed after its first full day of trading on the Nasdaq at $4.02, or down 16% on the day. And I know, this is probably a disappointment for many people who expected a massive rally, 2x, 3x, 4x today. And to be honest with you guys, I was a little bit disappointed too. Disappointed, but not surprised. Honestly, a little part of me hoped that I was wrong, and I was hoping that all those people that were saying that this is going to 2-3x today were right, and of course that didn't happen, so again, yeah, disappointed but not surprised. If we take a look at the prediction I made for where it was going to close out today on Tuesday after its first full day of trading on the Nasdaq rather, I said the most likely scenario was that it was going to close somewhere between $4.50 and $6. And of course, it finished at $4.02, so it's a little bit below what I said my most likely scenario was, but honestly, I was pretty damn close. So basically what we saw today, explaining why this did dip 16% throughout the day, was basically there were more people today who bought the stock in pre-uplisting or sometime in the past who sold it today planning on making a profit once it uplisted than there were new people that had been waiting to buy this stock on the first day of trading on the Nasdaq. So if you watched my price predictions video that I released a couple days ago, you'll know that I saw today as primarily a contest between two contravening forces. On the one hand, the profit takers, and on the other hand, the first-time buyers. And it appears that today, the profit takers won out. So it's important not to be discouraged by this result from the very first day that it's trading on the Nasdaq, because you got to remember, if you're investing in MindMed or any psychedelic medicines companies for that matter, you need to be a long-term long-term investor. These companies are attempting to disrupt a $100 billion annual mental health care pharmaceuticals market, and it is going to take 5+ years for these medicines to be fully developed, tested for efficacy and safety, and then finally deployed. Yes, the Nasdaq uplisting was important, but guys, we're just at the end of the very first inning. We've still got the entire ball game to play. So the real events that long-term investors should be focused on are not the Nasdaq uplisting, as I've been saying all this time in all my different videos, but rather the results of MindMed's clinical trials, which will tell us all how effective their medicines are going to be treating these illnesses like anxiety, like PTSD, like depression, etc. And tell us if they treat them more efficaciously rather than current methods do. So this is going to tell us in 5 years whether their stock price is at 30 cents or $30, much more than the events of today on the Nasdaq will do. And with that in mind, let's pivot to the near-term catalysts for MindMed and its stock. First up, we have the IPO of their main rival, Atai Life Sciences, a Peter Thiel-backed mega corporation. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into this company in the coming weeks, but for now, just know that they have a similar number of compounds to MindMed, if not a few more, and they're currently working towards bringing these compounds all to clinical trials. They currently have one that's in phase 2A, I believe, and then they have more that are planning to move towards phase 1 and towards phase 2. And we don't know the exact date of the IPO yet, but in the recent filing with the SEC, they say that they plan to do this as soon as possible. So we could be talking about within the next few weeks, realistically. So this IPO, it's going to ensure that media eyeballs continue on the psychedelic medicines landscape for weeks to come. And the more people hear about this, the more people hear the media talking about the potential for psychedelics to heal diseases like depression, like anxiety, like PTSD, etc., the more people are going to be putting money into this sector for the first time. And even though Atai is going to get more mainstream coverage than MindMed did, once people start comparing all these different companies in the sector, trying to figure out where they want to put their money, they may notice that, MindMed kind of compares favorably to the rest, even Atai. So in general, I do think that the Atai IPO is going to be also good for MindMed as well as the wider sector. The next catalyst that we're going to be talking about, which, like the previous one, really has nothing to do with MindMed itself, is going to be the advent of psychedelic ETFs, and also biomedical ETFs that may or may not include MindMed. To start, we already know that Advisor Shares is planning to imminently launch their own psychedelic medicines ETF, which will be named the Plant Medicines ETF, and it's going to trade under the ticker symbol PSIL, or SIL. MindMed, of course, is going to be included in this and is going to be a major inclusion in this ETF. To be clear, they haven't talked about who they're going to include yet, but obviously the leading player, or one of the two leading players, is going to be included in it. And as a reminder, guys, Advisor Shares already has both the second and the third largest marijuana ETFs, MSOS and YOLO. So this isn't like it's some tiny random company coming out of nowhere making this ETF. This is a well-established ETF that's going to include MindMed very soon. And still is going to have the dual effects of essentially locking away a certain percentage of MindMed's shares forever, whatever it buys, therefore reducing the supply of MindMed stocks that are traded openly. And it's also going to bring, of course, more media coverage. So just as a little segue here, guys, what matters more for the near-term stock price of MindMed is the positive media coverage, is how much people are talking about it, is stuff that's happening. But long-term, what matters is their medicines. But again, short-term, what matters is this media coverage, so that's going to be the main thing that either rises or decreases the stock going forward. Getting back to ETFs here, second point I wanted to make is that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of biomedical ETFs out there on the market already, and now that MindMed is uplisted to the Nasdaq, they're eligible to join them. So I don't know if any huge ones like, say, iShares Nasdaq Biotechnology, ticker symbol IBB, which is a major biotech ETF, if any of them are going to add MindMed imminently, but I do know that lots of these companies are probably going to start at the very minimum looking at MindMed, and probably over the next few months we'll start to see, an ETF here, an ETF there, start dabbling in MindMed. And of course, this is just, again, going to bring more media coverage. It's going to bring more people talking about MindMed. In terms of the long-term importance, however, these catalysts pale in comparison to results and progress in clinical trials. The first major catalyst that we want to talk about today for the upcoming few months for MindMed's long-term viability as an investment is going to be their completion of a phase 2A clinical trial evaluating the effects of using LSD to treat anxiety, codenamed Project Lucy. This portion of the project, the phase 2A, according to the most recent updates on the website clinicaltrials.gov, is set to end on May 1st, 2021. So in like 4 days. And maybe this could be pushed back a little bit. I don't know. These things tend to get pushed back from time to time. But they actually updated this about a month ago on the website, and they didn't say then that it was going to get pushed back, so I don't think it will. I think that this really will end on May 1st, which probably means in reality that it is ended already and they're just wrapping up doing the paperwork. And I don't really know when we the public, are going to get some results from this, but you really should keep an eye out for this because, again, this is going to be the first major catalyst. This is going to be much more important than the ETFs. This is going to be much more important than the Atai IPO, and yes, this is going to be much more important than the Nasdaq uplisting. So when this comes out, when we get this data, when we get to parse through it, it's going to give us our first major real indication of how successful the company is going to be in the long term. So when this happens, sometimes in the next couple of months, maybe imminently, just keep an eye out on that first major catalyst for MindMed in the next few months. Keeping with Project Lucy, MindMed plans to launch Phase 2B of this trial in Q4 of this year, after getting the okay from the FDA in Q3. So them being able to follow this timeline after getting positive results from Phase 2A trials, fingers crossed, if this happens, it will be a major shot in the arm for MindMed investors, and it's going to give us confidence for the long term. To be clear, the short-term stock price movement may react less to this news, even if the news is fantastic. It may react less to this news than something sexy like a Nasdaq uplisting, but it is going to be so much more important to us, guys. So I really stress to keep updated on this, and I'm going to try my best to bring you the updates as they happen, because this is what is important, not the Nasdaq uplisting. Next up, we have the completion of a phase 1 trial for 18MC to treat addiction, and that is codenamed Project Layla, and this is set to be completed on August 31st of this year. And soon after, like with the previous one, we should be getting data soon after this trial wraps up. And the main point of phase 1 is, of course, safety. So primarily, we just want confirmation that 18MC is safe to take. And again, we should be getting data sometime after completion, which will be very important for the long-term viability of MindMed as an investment. And then, of course, MindMed plans to move towards phase 2A by the end of this year, again, hopefully after receiving some positive data from phase 1. Lastly, in October, a phase 1 trial studying the safety of MindMed's LSD Neutralizer, a drug known as ketanserin, is set to finish. We have talked before on this channel about how LSD neutralizers are essential to the viability of MindMed and essential to the viability of LSD-assisted therapy, as LSD can last all day, which would make a 1 to 2 hour session 1 to 2 hour therapy session, fairly difficult. So if MindMed can prove that they essentially have a quote-unquote off switch to a LSD trip, then LSD-assisted therapy may be able to work in practical settings, which is really big for the company. So keep an eye out for that LSD Neutralizer study, which will be coming towards the end of the year. That is kind of the last major catalyst that I see for the rest of the upcoming months here. And of course, there might also be partnerships which will be brought up, but we don't really know in advance what partnerships are going to happen, but also keep an eye out for that. And also, one last thing, interspersed among these larger projects, we might also get data from a variety of less core projects. For example, this month, a phase 1 trial was completed that compared the effects and safety profiles of LSD to psilocybin. So we should get data from that soon, as well as from other projects. And I'm going to go ahead and put all the links to these different studies that we just talked about down in the description. There is lots of cool information in there, so I highly suggest you go and check them out. We'll probably dig through them more in the future, but for now, links are below. Go check them out. It will really help you deciding whether or not MindMed's a good investment. So in terms of the stock price, nobody knows how it's going to react in the coming months. Maybe it could slowly deflate as people stop talking about it, or maybe after the insanity of Nasdaq Day ends, people who had been waiting may start buying in. Maybe we will get lots of good media coverage over the next few months with things like the PSIL, the ETF, like Atai going public, and maybe their stock will slowly climb over the next few months. Honestly, guys, nobody really knows. We don't have the faintest idea. You just got to keep looking at it in the long term. You have to keep focused on what matters. That wasn't English. You have to keep focused on what matters, and that is, of course, the science. If their medicines work, we win. If their medicines don't work, well, it sucks to suck. And I'm actually happy that the Nasdaq uplisting is now over, because we can get back to talking about on this channel what actually matters for the long-term viability of MindMed, which is, of course, the science, their trials, their progress, etc. If you enjoyed this episode, support the channel with your like and subscribe. And also, let us know down in the comments whether you were disappointed by today, the first day on the Nasdaq exchange, or not, or whether this was more or less what you expected. And also let us know whether you are still excited about MindMed as a long-term investment. We want to know what you have to say. I do read every single one of your comments, and I respond to most of them. So let's go start a convo down in the comment section. That's all for today, guys. I love you all. I'll talk to you soon. Click on one of your videos you see now if you want to keep this relationship going a little bit longer. And yeah, I'll talk to you probably tomorrow. Peace, guys.